So before I start this video, I know Ian Flynn, one of the head writers in Sonic Frontiers, has stated that the end is gone and done. And I don't mean any disrespect to the writer when I say this. I'm pretty sure he's an awesome person and the Sonic fandom loves his work for the series and everything that he's done. I don't believe that's the case for a couple of reasons. And one key point is that the end itself never saw Sonic as a being that can stand to its power, and to an extent, the end is telling the truth because in both endings, Sonic needed help from outside sources to be able to defeat the end. And the Final Horizon ending of Sonic Frontiers conveys this message pretty straightforwardly, since Sonic needed like 3.5 transformations and to be shot out of Supreme's own gun to be able to break through the end. And if we're going off the original ending with what Sage said about the end going into space to regain its true form, we're never fighting this thing at its full power. It could very well be a lot stronger, not to mention it explains that it has different reincarnations of itself. Although the end never goes into detail about what it means by having multiple incarnations, knowing how powerful the end is and how much it took Super Sonic to be able to defeat it, it very well could not have fully died, especially since when the Supreme Titan got corrupted, it wasn't represented having a physical form, it was represented in this sort of weird haze that ended up corrupting Supreme. So now that that's out the way, let's get into the actual video. So when Sonic Frontiers was still getting leaks, there was one story leak about the game involving these fake holographic Chaos Emeralds, and at the time I thought this could have been referring to the Phantom Ruby since the way the Chaos Emeralds were described in that leak showed similar looks and abilities to Phantom Ruby and Sonic Forces. Not to mention the Ruby and the Emerald do share some parallels despite being opposites. Even if they might not be similar on a surface level, the Phantom Ruby is described to be able to warp reality and create pocket dimensions. And knowing what Super Sonic and other super characters have done in the past with the Emeralds, this does put them on a similar playing field. And before I move on, I know some people are going to say, well, Sonic didn't need the Chaos Emeralds and Forces to be able to be infinite, so how can the Chaos Emeralds and the Phantom Ruby be on similar power levels? Well, there are a few reasons why this is the case. For instance, when we play the tag team sections in Sonic Forces, our avatar can run on a similar speed to Sonic even if he or she is lagging behind Sonic a little bit. I know using direct gameplay is kind of iffy in terms of what a character can do in story or lore, but that's not my only reason to why the avatar was a significant help when beating Infinite. Another reason why is that our custom character actually had a Phantom Ruby toward the beginning of the game, and when our character fought Infinite, although it had no control over it, it was still able to use the Phantom Ruby to some extent, despite having this experience in Infinite at using it. There was also a Phantom Ruby in Sonic Mania that was able to knock Sonic out of his super form at the time and send him to the present. This shows some level of compatibility that the Phantom Ruby has over the Chaos Emeralds, or at least some level of control. I know our custom hero ended up losing the Phantom Ruby when getting rid of the sun towards the end of the game, but this doesn't mean that our hero can't use another Ruby, as Infinite implies that a person with great power can also trigger the Phantom Ruby. So not only was Infinite dealing with a person that can use a Phantom Ruby's power, but he was also dealing with a considerably stronger Sonic at the time as well. And Sonic himself said in Forces that he gets stronger every second. And this is actually true since in Sonic Generations, Sonic ends up beating Perfect Chaos in his base form. And in that same game, Sonic fought Shadow again, who would also be stronger at the time due to the events of Shadow the Hedgehog, and he still was able to beat him. Although I do think that match is pretty close between the two. But besides that, in my past theories, I landed on the idea that Infinite actually got transported to the Starfall Islands instead of being transported back to Eggman, since this would explain why the soldiers on the Starfall Islands behave in a similar way to Infinite's illusions with a weird red abstract glitchy pattern that surrounds their bodies. Another idea I had is that when Infinite made it to the Starfall Islands, the Phantom Ruby must have put him in some kind of recovery, and that's when Eggman found him, used the Phantom Ruby in his chest in a cyberspace station to create Sage, as this would explain why Sage looks similar to Infinite to the point where even Sega pointed this out during an interview. At least that's what I thought until the game came out. Although my theories ended up missing way off target, I do think Frontiers' story did show some potential for Infinite's return, since his story was one of the few that was never resolved, and I think that he can be linked to the end in some interesting ways. But before I start giving some ideas about how the two can return, we need to answer the question, do these two have a connection? And the answer is yes. So in the original ending of Sonic Frontiers, the end drops this line.
Saw your mind as you ran through my prison. You have fought machines and gods. They were mighty. They were finite. I am infinite. I am nothing.
Although in this moment the end is more than likely referring to itself as a force of nature, In Sonic Forces, Infinite does refer to himself in a similar sense, to a little bit of a lesser extent, but he still does see other people around him as just bugs. Although Infinite is not referring to himself as a god, he does get a change in his personality after he does get the ruby, which does show some connection between him and the End. Not only that, but when the End kills the pilot that controls the Supreme Mech, as the mech is being corrupted, we see it emanates a similar aura to the power of the Phantom Ruby. The End refers to itself as being infinite and also being nothing, while Infinite the character, on the other hand, with the Phantom Ruby, has the ability to create null space, which is a pocket dimension where nothing exists inside of it. Not only that, but Sega has confirmed in an interview that Sage and Infinite do look similar, but the only reason Sage looks like Infinite is because when she was being created, her AI got messed up and corrupted, and this corruption was a result of the End being sealed away. So by showing a connection between Infinite and Sage, by proxy, we can connect Infinite to the End. So imagine Infinite floating through the void of null space as he remembers his defeat against Sonic. The Ruby recognized that it was about to be destroyed, so it retreated into null space, which can only be accessed by the Phantom Ruby, a place where Sonic can't travel to. As he remembers, he grows frustrated with himself, knowing that he could have done more to defeat the Blue Nuisance. But as he's pondering this thought, he feels a great presence in null space with him. He could not feel the presence of another Phantom Ruby being used, as he remembered they were all destroyed by Sonic of the past and present, along with the hero. The only one that could have possibly been used to travel here was the one from Classic Sonic's time, which was never found by the Doctor. But regardless, he powers up, preparing to deal with whatever threat is coming his way. But then, as he felt this presence, it didn't seem like it was here to harm him. He could feel a connection between the Ruby and this odd sensation. But then, energy from the Ruby leaked out and formed into this aspiration of the End in the form of an ancient. Infinite seemed appalled that the Ruby was able to create such a being. But then, this aspiration spoke, and he said, "Mortal, you are the last remaining source of my power, or at least this incarnation of me. You have learned to use my power to bring death and destruction everywhere you go, but you have yet to unlock this endless wellspring that lies before you. If you choose to become my avatar, then you will have the power to stand against those that have wronged you, see worlds burn before your eyes, become the true ultimate mercenary you were meant to become. See yourself become the end of all things. See yourself become death." Infinite at first is taken aback by the sudden chance to finally get revenge against Sonic and his friends, but takes the offer without a second thought, and after his deal was done, the End explains to Infinite that Sonic's cyber form was the only thing that could stand to its physical one, so the End guides Infinite to the Starfall Islands. With the Ruby they have, they take all the energy from the cyberspace locations and apply it to his own form, and then they set their sights on Sonic and his friends for one final showdown. Also, if you want a review of Sonic Forces, Forces to me is around about a 6.9 out of 10. I didn't enjoy it as much as Frontiers or Generations, but the avatar stages and gameplay, along with the customization, and some of the classic Sonic and modern Sonic levels did keep me playing more often than not. Although the gameplay of Forces has been done better in Frontiers and Generations, I don't think the game is bad. I enjoyed it for what it was worth, but it definitely could have used some improvements. Although I do think Infinite's story as well as the Avatar were pretty big highlights for me. While I'm at it, I'm going to review Frontiers. So to me, Frontiers is ranging from about an 8 to a 9.7 out of 10. To me, the biggest highlight in Sonic Frontiers is definitely the open world traversal. Sonic's coastal controls make him really nice to play in the open world, although two things I don't really like about the game is the fact that it could use a bit more polish in some areas and making the characters move a little bit better, and I also wish you can use your open zone controls in cyberspace stages. Overall, those are my general thoughts on both games. Thanks for making it this far. If you like the video, please comment. This is Static tuning out.